Hi, I'm Tim, welcome to our channel, and thanks for logging on. If you enjoy these videos, do me a favor and subscribe to our YouTube channel right here on Watchbox Reviews. I'd really appreciate it, and then I'd be able to deliver my best to your inbox on a daily basis. And if you like these watches, I don't blame you, you can buy them on our website, thewatchbox.com, where you'll be able to see full box papers and accessories included as applicable with each watch, high-res images of each watch and its accessories, and full pricing for this and our entire collection of pre-owned and vintage timepieces. Buy, trade, and sell on thewatchbox.com. The watch on my wrist is a throwback, not as far back as you might suspect given the vintage nomenclature often applied to the brass movement Journes. They were really just 1999 to 2004. Not vintage by any standard, but Journes. Nevertheless, these watches play by their own rules. And this Tourbillon Remontoir 38mm in platinum features a number of hallmarks of the early Journe watches, all of them discontinued. So let's start with the basics. How does a 38mm early 2000s FP Journe wear in platinum? Well, quite well, thank you. 38mm across the round of the case, not including the crown or the slight overlap between the bezel, caseback, and mid-case. That actually extends it to 38.5mm. The watch is reasonably slim considering a constant force device, a power reserve scale, and a tourbillon. It measures a very wearable 9mm thick on the wrist with a domed bezel that will allow it to slip underneath any dress cuff, jacket, or sleeve beneath. Lug-to-lug, the watch is still compact. 44.8mm lug-to-lug means you could wear this watch quite easily on a wrist as small as perhaps 13 centimeters in circumference if that wrist is oval in profile. Now, the lug spacing, for those of you who are into accessorizing your watches, is 20mm, and you will find a world of options. The watch has an impressive heft to it. The platinum construction of the case guarantees that. On the underside, you can see it features the newer quick-release spring bars that Journe now fits to watches. This is an upgraded subsequent strap, not a vintage strap, but the later double gator with the quick-release spring bars. You simply pull these tabs and you pop the strap right off for close cleaning between the lugs or to swap shoes and change the look. Now, I mentioned double gator. FP Journe now fits its watches, and when watches go in for service, they receive straps that are alligator on the top, generally a large rectangular scale, here a matte finish with a monotone stitch and a folded edge, and then they receive a softer circular scale, small circular scale alligator leather on the bottom. This is relatively soft against the skin, so it's comparable to calfskin, but whereas calfskin on the underside of a strap often wears faster than the gator on the top and the bottom of this strap will wear symmetrically, ensuring that unless you have serious glandular issues, this has the potential to be a half-decade strap. That's an upscale refinement that costs a bit more, but I appreciate it from a true luxury brand. Folding buckle, as you can see, all in platinum. Absolute security on the wrist. This is a feature that's nice to have with FP Journe watches, as not all examples come with folding buckles. Many still use pin buckles, and many at the time, in the early 2000s, would have been fitted with pin buckles, so that's a nice accessory along with the modern strap. The case is simple. All of high polish. We can get real close now. The watch off the wrist deserves its spotlight solo and its close-up. It also deserves a little bit more aperture so you can see it in better light. Alright, so now we take a look at the watch and we can see that the case, all of high polish, is simple, discreet, but sensuously curved. It's nicely executed. There isn't a lot to it, but what is there is fascinating. It catches the eye and it inspires the imagination. It is the dial, however, that really makes this watch. You can see that the tourbillon gets pride of place. This is a design that FP Journe drew by hand years before he actually made the watch, because he always starts with the design of the dial first. If the dial's not interesting, he always says, why bother? And right off the bat, from 1999, when the first Tourbillon Remontoir was delivered to the first 20 subscription customers, it was an interesting watch to look at. Here you have, along with the discontinued 38mm case size no longer offered, the yellow gold dial that is no longer offered on the Tourbillon Remontoir series. This, of course, is the original tourbillon, and it's a Series 4. We'll go over what makes a Generation 1 Series 4 tourbillon in a moment, but let's highlight some of the functional features. You have a power reserve scale that traces the 42 hours of autonomy when fully wound. It is fully wound now, as it sort of works backwards, with 0 representing the hours since you've fully wound the watch. So I wound it for this video just a few minutes ago, so it indicates 0 rather than 42. Basically 0 hours since I wound the watch. You have the tourbillon, blazing away at 21,600 vibrations per hour. It does feature an overcoil hairspring. It beats away at 3 Hertz. The overcoil ensures that if the tourbillon doesn't properly cancel out the effects of gravity on the timing of the watch, the overcoil structure will by promoting concentric beating of the tourbillon. Now you jump over to the deadbeat display. It's not quite a deadbeat seconds display, even though it functions as such. That is your window into the Remontoir d'égalité, the constant force system represented by a linear spring, as Journe executes as Remontoir. Lange uses a hairspring, but Journe uses a linear spring. And so you have that window into the deadbeat function, the 1 second impulse of the constant force mechanism. And from the mainspring barrel, the power is transmitted through the Remontoir in quantized bursts of energy, so the same amount of energy always reaches the escapement. That's the constant force system that allows the watch to keep excellent time. Journe has commented that you really only need the constant force system and the overcoil for precision. The tourbillon is just there because it's cool. I don't disagree. The movement is caliber 1498, so 14 French Ligne is the size, and 98 denotes the year FP Journe began work on it. 25 joules, manual wind, 42-hour power reserve, 3 Hertz beat rate. You can see the crown wheel, the ratchet wheel, a unique click spring architecture that's far more elaborate than necessary, but a wonderful piece of theater. You'll also note the linear Côte de Genève striations across the bridges and black polished screws. Now, this is a brass movement Journe. That is a discontinued feature of the watch. The discontinued features of the watch really add up. 38mm case, Generation 1 tourbillon, brass movement, gold dial. So the brass movement is rhodium plated to create a level of anti-corrosion, and that anti-corrosive property turns the movement silver rather than the traditional gold of brass. The rhodium that is plated onto it is silver gray, and so that's what you're actually looking at when you see a brass movement Journe. You're looking at silver rhodium, not brass. Now let's talk about the Series 4. I mentioned this is a Generation 1 Series 4 Journe tourbillon. Here's what makes a Series 4. First of all, the first 20 watches said 0 of 20. They were the subscription watches, so they will be numbered on the dial out of 20. Second generation watches would have had a rounded Remontoir cock, so that little structure that supports the jumping indicator, that would have been continuously rounded like the cock for the tourbillon. So that would have denoted a second generation watch. There would have been bigger screws, smaller printing of the numerals of the power reserve. You would have had that rounded profile for the Remontoir cock, but you wouldn't have had the 0 or serialized number out of 20 as you would have had on the subscription series. Now a Series 3 would have had a somewhat different profile with different sized screws. The screws would have been a little bigger than what you see here. The printing for the power reserve scale would have been a little smaller too, but you would have had the same flat Remontoir cock that you see here. Now finally, you have the 4th series, where the printing for the power reserve scale is about the same size as the minute numerals of the minute scale, and then you have these small screws. You also have a higher overall level of quality and finish. The watch has got exponentially better over the years, and then you have that flat Remontoir cock. So why is this important? It's important because the watch is a certifiable collectible. All Generation 1 tourbillon Remontoir watches are. The count, if you include the 99 ruthenium pieces, the count is still quite modest. You're talking somewhere between 380 and 600 pieces total. You're talking a very compact production run that spanned 1999 through about 2003. So this watch actually features another discontinued period piece feature, which is the double hallmark. You can see the casemaker mark is of Eleanor of Paris, and there are French as well as Swiss hallmarks on the case. So they were originally made in Paris or just outside of Paris and then shipped to Switzerland, and this continued right up until about 2008 when Journe actually bought Eleanor and moved it to Geneva. So you have the old Eleanor maker's marks as well as the French hallmarks on the precious metal, and you can see that there's a year stamped next to the reference. T was the reference for the tourbillon Remontoir. You can see 02, that was the year the case was made. That was discontinued in late 2004, early 2005. So on many levels, this watch represents discontinued hardware, discontinued traditions, discontinued features. A truly special piece, scarce, and if you're going to own just one Journe, this would be an excellent candidate. The one and the only, you couldn't complain if it were the tourbillon Remontoir. Generation 1, any series, an epic collector's piece. See it and potentially make it yours on the Watchbox.